You're watching PowerNation. Today on Detroit Muscle, we freshen up Flashback's fronts and slap on the rest of her chrome-plated components, along with a tricked-out tank to feed this fuel-guzzling phenom. Hey guys, welcome to Detroit Muscle. Today we've got a couple of projects planned. One is restoration. Second is more of replication, but both are all in the efforts of looking good. Oh, Flashback is kind of an odd car, and with that said, it being a 71 Caprice, it has a 1 year only half-make grille in it. Now this large egg crate style is actually a pretty sought after piece. Now, if you were looking for one of these that was a NOS part, well, you're kind of SOL. To find a good used one, well, that's just as difficult to find as well. Now, looking at this one, it's in nice shape. There's no cracks, there's no breaks, not even any nicks in it. However, it does have some corrosion and what I'd like to call some organic material on the surface. Now, what we're planning to do with this one is a little bit unorthodox, but we hope that it works. With a delicate component like this, you know it's 50 plus years old, you gotta take some extra precautions to make sure that you don't tear it up. Now, some might think that you could just grab some steel wool and some polish and just have your way with it. Problem with that is you may do more damage than good. What we're gonna be using to brighten up our grill is some corrosion and rust removing solution. Now, there's several of these out on the market, and a lot of them do a very similar thing. You basically put it in the solution, and it dissolves all that crustiness. Now, with our old Roadrunner project, we used it on some heater controls. It saved a lot of work, and when we were all said and done, it did make a dramatic difference. Now, you're probably thinking with this big old grill that we're gonna need a big old jug of it, like 55 gallons worth. But that's not the case. I'm going to use a trash bag, a vacuum, and this stuff, and a simple zip tie, and I think we're going to need a far less amount. Now the trash bag that we're using is one of those heavy mill ones. You know, they're a bit more puncture resistant. And if you're working with a grill or something that's got a pokey surface on it, and you want to pay attention to that. I'm just trying to finagle this thing in here. Oh yeah. Now we're just going to dump our solution in here. We're going to use all of it. Now I'm just going to tie up a trash bag like you would after the Thanksgiving dinner. I'm not choking this thing up all nice and tight. The vacuum's going to do all that. But I have left a little hole in here, and that's where I'm going to put the end of the vacuum on here and see if I can collapse this bag. To make sure that that solution is touching the surface, I'm going to slide it to one side, let it sit for a little while, and then come back, rotate it back over here. Well, we let this thing set overnight, and now all we have to do is cut off our zip tie and see what it looks like once we pull it out of the bag. I bet it's going to look a lot better once it comes out of there. We're also going to take it out there and kind of give it a quick bath, see exactly what we've got. And, oh yeah, it's already shiny. Got to be a little careful. I don't want to break it. I'm teasing you. I got it turned around backwards so you can't see it. This is the greatest water sprayer outer there ever was. You suck at being a fireman. This is one of those kind of jobs you get to ponder life. It's so tedious. You focus on just what you're cleaning, it drive you nuts. I like it, shiny. Not too shabby, except for my water sprayer.
Up next, we brighten FatStack's smile and give her the juice to cut loose. Actually looking forward to having gas. Well, after a couple hours of labor, old Tommy has certainly breathed new life back into our old grill. And it looks really nice. And only 9 screws later, and old FatStack's gonna have her smile back. One thing I like on these old Caprices is this little emblem up front. You know, if you see that in your rearview mirror, guy behind you means business. This is almost a torque sequence, almost like on an intake. You gotta get all your holes lined up first, start in the center and work your way out. Because if you crank down on these too much, too fast, you can actually start to spread the grill in a sense, and it'll bind up and actually crack as you're tightening it down. So gotta be really careful, especially at this point in a restoration. I think old Tommy would be mighty sore at me if I broke his fancy new grill that he just spent hours and hours cleaning up. So fresh and so clean, clean. And Tommy and I have a lot of hours into the paint and body work on this thing, so before I get this front bumper on, go ahead and mask all this paint off, just to be safe. You guys probably remember a little while back we visited our friend Steve Tracy at Advanced Plating, and he and his guys took all of the rusty, crusty chrome pieces off old FatStack and applied his proprietary alchemy to wash away over 50 years of grit, grime, and grease to transform the dull trinkets off our Caprice from worn steel to full-on sex appeal. It was pretty cool to see how involved the chrome plating process actually is. It's one of those peek behind the curtain moments you rarely get to see that reveals how the magic happens. Now, since the front bumper probably weighs close to 100 pounds, I brought in a hired gun, Mr. Payton, who's gonna help me with the install. I'll give you the heavy end.
Oh, thanks.
Still good?
Yep.
The good news is this is not awkward or heavy at all, right?
It can come my way a little bit. How about your side? All right, well, I got mine.
Man, if I did 30 of these a day, I might be as fast as those guys on the assembly line. Whew. Well, we're continuing to chip away at the block on our 71 Caprice FatStack project. Before we get the rear bumper on, the fuel tank has to go in. Now, the last time you guys saw this thing, it wasn't in the greatest shape. Tommy had to do some full-on open heart surgery so he could pull out the old cinder and make room where we could install the new FiTech setup. After some precise cutting, welding, and a few shots of liquid refreshment, the Caprice's not so great gas tank changed from a pumpkin into a carriage that can supply the fuel needed to the heart of this big green fire-breathing dragon. But it wasn't quite ready for the glass slipper. So we sent it over to the guys at Blast from the Past, and they sandblasted it and powder coated it in this really cool kind of flat silver color. Another thing we did is we went ahead and installed a new factory style sending unit. Even though it's not going to be the main source of our fuel supply, we just needed it for the fuel gauge indicator. Now, for our fuel supply for that 840 horsepower supercharged LS, it's actually going to be our FiTech intake universal pump. And one thing about doing a fuel injection system is we always recommend that you use these AN style fittings. And there's a reason for that. You've got a lot of pressure going through these fuel lines, and it could be in there from 50 to 60 psi easily. So if you use an old style rubber hose and clamp style for your fuel lines, what could happen is all that pressure could literally blow the lines off of whatever you're using, and that causes a fire hazard. And I don't want that for any of you guys at home any more than you do. Let's get this thing in here. Ideally, this is a two-man job, but if you got a transmission jack like this at home, or even if you're doing it on the floor with a floor jack, it makes things a little bit easier. Kinda awkward and heavy. Luckily, there's no fuel in this thing, though. One time, I had this old S10 ZR2 pickup. I had to swap the fuel pump on it. I did it in my driveway, and I didn't think ahead. I was a young kid, probably 22, 23. I still had about 3/4 of a tank in there. That was fun. Not my smartest moment, but still got the fuel pump swapped. So my lesson for you at home, if you're gonna do this in your own garage, drain the fuel tank. Perfect. This may be one of the few times that I'm actually looking forward to having gas. Well, we've got our fuel tank installed, and now it's time to check off another milestone on our 71 Caprice Fat Stack project by installing the rear bumper. That's another straightforward process, very similar to the front, only a little bit lighter. How's she look?
Like a new back bumper.
You know, you could almost use that thing to shave. I wouldn't recommend it though. Coming up, I challenge you to say you don't love the TA. Without a doubt, one of the coolest perks of working out of the Detroit Muscle Shop has got to be the plethora of American muscle cars that we get to wrench on. And we try not to discriminate because at the end of the day, we're all car guys and we just like what we like. Take Tommy, for example. That guy is a tried and true bow tie man at heart. His first car was a 62 Impala, which he still owns to this day, but his favorite is 71 to 76 GM big bodies. No surprise there, right? As for me, well, my first car was a 69 Chevelle, and my family has owned many different GMs throughout the years. However, it's funny to think how our tastes change as we mature. In fact, nowadays I consider myself more of a Mopar guy. How can you not be? Think about it, 69 Dodge Chargers, 71 Hemi Cudas, all the good stuff. And one of my favorites actually didn't come with a 440 or a Hemi, came with a small block. These factory race-ready Mopars packed a mean punch that far exceeded their displacement. No, it wasn't the AAR Cuda, talking about his little brother, the 1970 Dodge Challenger TA. A 1970 Dodge Challenger TA. Those letters stand for Trans Am. Road car series dominated by Z28s and Boss 302s. Dodge threw its white hat in the ring with this fierce new pony car. And with that, muscle car legend was born.
Trans Am rules stated you had to sell what you raced, so the street version was every bit as powerful. It all started with a vicious 346 pack. That was your only engine choice, and no other Dodge had it.
Horsepower was underrated at 290. Yeah, try closer to 350. Part of its power came from the innovative snorkel scoop, which was raised an inch above the hood. This helped it avoid the slower, choppier air on the hood surface.
The oval air cleaner sealed directly to the fiberglass hood for maximum airflow. Crack open a 6-pack and you'll find 3 2-barrel carbs sitting on top of an Edelbrock aluminum intake.
Keeping with the race image, the exhaust exited in front of the rear tires. To achieve this, the pipes had to do a U-turn inside the mufflers. The TA was also the first muscle car to come stock with 2 different size tires. Up front, you had 2 E6015s, and in the back, the fatter G6015s. Front and rear spoilers and a race-style gas cap completed the look.
The suspension got several upgrades, including the rear leaf springs that had a higher load rating. The front and rear sway bars were stiffer, shocks were heavy duty, and power disc front brakes.
Inside the TA, a Hearst pistol grip put all that firepower in the palm of your hand. Bucket seats and rally gauges were included, but AC was NA on the TA.
The Challenger line debuted in '70. It was built on an all-new E-body platform. It shares some styling with its sister car, Cuda, but Challengers rode on a 2-inch longer wheelbase. The body line creases, quad headlights, and Venturi grille helped to set it apart.
You can tell a true TA by the fender tag. It's got to have Trans Am stamped right on it. This all-original numbers matching beauty was bought back in 1975 and recently restored to stock.
It's definitely a fun car to drive. It's fast and always gets a lot of attention.
TAs didn't do all that well on the race circuit, though it did make a few top 3 finishes. Dodge only managed to sell about 2,400, partly because the Trans Am package cost over $1,000. There were plans to offer it again in '71. It even showed up in the Scat Pack brochure, but Dodge was pulling out of racing and the muscle car market started to fade.
With its loud exhaust and a 346 pack, you don't need a radio to hear sweet music. The 70 TA ended up a 1-year only model, making it highly sought after today. Good luck finding and catching one of these.
The Challenger TA was definitely an iconic muscle car back in its day. And to build something that can stand on its own, well, it could be a challenge in itself. But I think it's safe to say we're well on down that path with the old fat stack. Up next, we decode a tire trope and carb up a heated topic. And in all reality, me and a buddy could bust this out in a weekend. You know, guys, we have many different viewers across the entire automotive spectrum. And some of you have been wrenching on cars for decades, while others, well, you may just be getting started. And no matter your level of experience, sometimes it's good to just get back to basics. And in my personal opinion, one of the most important aspects of any build will be dictating the stance on your project. Take old Fat Stack, for example. It's a low, mean, green street machine that's slightly squatted in the rear to give it that perception that it's launching even when it's sitting still. And then there's Roadburner, an aggressive, angry-looking muscle car with that traditional hot rod rake due to the meaty tires in the back and the skinnies in the front. Your tire and wheel size will heavily dictate which direction you want to go. I've got a set of Continental ExtremeContact Sport tires on the table to kind of help guide you through the thought process so that you know you're making the right decision. Most tire manufacturers have a series of letters and numbers stamped on the sidewall. The letters are usually going to dictate a tread style, submodel, or even a speed rating, while the numbers, well, those are going to dictate your size. Now let's take a look at a side-by-side comparison. Now these two tires are pretty much the same except for one is a 245 and the other is a 275. See that difference? Now the next number is going to be your side tire profile, meaning the real estate going these two directions. So when it comes to stance, this is actually the easiest way to do it. If you raise that number on your rear tires, it will give you more of that hot rod rake, just like Roadburner. If you decrease that number, the profile becomes smaller, giving your wheel and tire combo that rubber band look. And then finally, your last number is going to be your wheel size. On this one it says 20, meaning only a 20-inch rim can fit inside this tire. And this is one of the most common mistakes people make when they're ordering tires online or buying from a private seller. So make sure you got the right wheel size before you order your set. Hopefully all this information helps you find the ideal stance for your ride. Some of the best memories I have growing up working on hot rods with my old man is tuning an old school carburetor on a small block Chevy. And usually when we were done, man, that thing ran like a top. And anymore, a lot of guys are switching over to modern fuel injection like this setup from FiTech. And why is that? Well, that is a very highly heated and debated topic amongst a lot of enthusiasts. Mostly old school guys love being able to just tune a carburetor with the spin of a screwdriver, while a lot of younger guys love that plug and play horsepower. Probably one of the biggest obstacles guys run into on one of these setups is the electronic side of things. Now luckily FiTech has really simplified all of that. Now all you're really going to need to do is wire in a relay to your fuel pump and a key hot ignition source. From there you got to tie in a pigtail to your O2 and your temperature sensor, and that all plugs directly into a main harness on your throttle body. And after you've got it all wired up, just kick on your monitor, and then you have to input your elevation, engine displacement, target idle RPM, and then your WOT tuning, or wide open throttle. If you've ever considered swapping your old carburetor out for modern fuel injection but weren't quite sure of the complications involved, well, you might be surprised to find that these things are a lot simpler than you think. And in all reality, you and a buddy could bust this out in a weekend. It's time well spent if you ask me. After almost a full year of blood, sweat, and tears, old FatStack's looking like a car again. And you know what? It seems like just yesterday we were pulling this thing out of the weeds, and look at her now. A refined, refurbished version of her old self. And you know what? For the amount of time we put in today, we got a lot of work done. We started off by brightening up FatStack's smile, by scrubbing out all the tartar and cavities in its grill for a full-fledged restoration. Then we bolted on our freshly re-chromed bumpers so that she looked good coming and going. Finally, we installed the gas tank that's going to add fuel to the fire that will ignite the soul of that supercharged LS. We're closer to finishing FatStack than you think. Won't be long now before we're opening it up on the highway, making our neighbors jealous. But for now, just got to keep on trucking.